Segment 2, Golden Black Live. Brian Newbert joins us. I want to thank our sponsors, I want to thank WLFI, but we'll also thank Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham already taking reservations for apartments for 2017-18. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. And, of course, Hilton Garden Inn, Christy Kuntz, and all the folks down there. She is ready to say that when tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI tonight. And, Brian, opening night for men's basketball, and everybody seems to be so focused on Monday. I don't know if anybody's really focused on anything because of all the election and everything else this week. We're all kind of thrown into a different pattern. But this is a season opener tonight, and of course Villanova on Monday. What are you seeing?
Yeah, obviously Purdue is going to have some hurdles here early. I think we've known all along. Some things Purdue is going to have to transition to a little bit of a different identity, especially on defense. Purdue is going to have to work in some potentially influential personnel with some existing personnel. So there's going to be some transitions early. They've not made things, easy on themselves with, some suspensions to start the season. Jaquil Taylor's injury, he's out months and not games. And I don't know what that's going to mean to the one-loss record at the end of the day. I don't know if Jaquil Taylor was winning you any games this year, but I think that's going to make things a little bit more difficult on this team too. That coupled with kind of a non-conference schedule that's not exactly set up for wins, it's set up for seeding. If you go on to have the sort of season you want to have, Purdue's going to have to overcome some things here early. In order to be the team everybody seems to think they are, and they have a chance to be.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting even with respect to Taylor, it all works fine as long as Haas and Swanigan stay out of foul trouble, and Haas can play the number of minutes you would want him to play. I think Swanigan we know can play, probably can play 35 to 38 minutes, but again, that foul trouble. And again, a game, I'm not dismissing, well, I am kind of dismissing McNeese State tonight, maybe, but you have a game at Villanova against a team that's got a very good backcourt, a team that is obviously used to playing at a high level, will not be intimidated at a place like Mackey Arena, but it is an opportunity. How much importance do you place on that first, that game against Villanova in terms of getting things off to a good start?
Well, obviously, you want to win it. That's a huge tone setter for your season if you can get it. That's a huge resume win right off the bat. And you are playing for seeding this year. You are not sitting here saying, hey, can we get in the NCAA tournament? I mean, you're assuming you're in the NCAA tournament. You have every reason to.
Yeah.
It's a huge resume win right off the bat, and the resume is going to matter at the end of the year to help or deter Purdue from getting where it wants to go. I think more than anything, games like this make you better for when it matters even more, later in the season. And Villanova, being as guard-centric as it is a perfect, I guess, shot glass full of alcohol on kind of Purdue's open wound here, in the sense that, Purdue's got to figure out something out defensively. They have to be able to stop the dribble. They have to be able to protect the lane. That is what they're working on right now, a new defensive identity. That is very much a question mark going into the season, and you will not face a opponent more designed to twist that knife than Villanova. I want to say something about the big men too. They're going to loom large against Villanova, because Purdue has an advantage on the inside on paper, whereas Villanova has the advantage in the backcourt. With Purdue's depth being what it is, and granted, Basil Smotherman will be back for that game.
Yeah.
But it's not that you have Caleb Swanigan, Isaac Haas, Vincent Edwards. Those guys are going to play 30 minutes a game, plus, probably. It's how they play minutes 26 through 35 that really matter.
I agree
because when you don't have a lot of depth, those guys are going to have to be on the floor a lot, and you're going to need them to be playing at their best when those games are on the line. And it's going to be an incredible test of their endurance. Foul trouble is one thing, fatigue is another. Purdue needs to steer clear of both of them because they need those guys not only playing, but playing at a really high level. We know what Isaac Haas can do. We don't know what Isaac Haas can do tired.
Yeah.
And that there might be two very different things.
Yeah, you have the situation too, and you've talked a lot about that. The way last season ended, which tends to be for those of us that maybe dwell on those kind of things some. How important to, do you think the guys that say, not that they've forgotten it, but they've certainly moved on from it, but does that present another hurdle in terms of getting the season off to a good start to say, hey, we have the right focus, we've kind of let all that go and we've moved on? Or is that any factor at all? Is it just a factor for us old folks?
Well, I think obviously it's something that's there until it's dispelled. So it's entirely possible that, let's say hypothetically, Purdue leads Villanova by 5 with 3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And it's a game that if you just do the right things for 3 minutes, you win. That is going to come up. I mean, they are all human beings, and they're going to understand, hey, we were in these positions last year, here's what happened. It didn't always go against them last year. It did a lot of the time, but it didn't always. Until Purdue gets in those situations again and gets through them, that's going to be there. And even if they get through them a couple times, it's still something that this team has to prove it can get through. I mean, they are better designed from a personnel standpoint. They're older, they're more experienced, they're more mature. They should handle those things better, but until they do, that's obviously a question they have to answer.
A couple of 2 or 3 X factors I look at it. The guys that we always talk a lot about. Swanigan, Vincent Edwards, Haas on down the line, Dakota Mathias, guys that we have a pretty good feel of what we're going to see. Though, obviously with Vincent Edwards, you wanted to see him take another step. Mm-hmm. It's the Spike Albrecht, who we know is a good basketball player, but we don't know for sure how much he's going to contribute or what way he's going to contribute night in, night out. Let's start with him. In terms of what will he bring to the table. We know things like stability and the ability to shoot the basketball is good, but is there anything that we might be missing that he could be a bigger help than one might think?
Yeah, poise. I mean, Purdue had a press issue last year, but the press was a symptom of a larger issue, and that was poise.
Yeah.
And poise manifested itself in many ways. One of them was the press. One of them was turning the ball over in the half court. One of them was untimely defensive breakdowns, quick shots, whatever the case may be. This is a guy who's old, he's mature, he's played at higher levels than anyone on this roster has played before. One would think he's part of the solution and not part of the problem. So that's kind of where, and he can make shots, and he's smart, and he's just a good basketball player. Purdue needs stability in all its forms this year, and I think he was a really important, potentially, addition in that sense.
What do you sense with Carson Edwards, the freshman from Texas that comes in, and we saw certainly over the summer some signs of him being really special, and I'm not saying we haven't seen signs of it yet, but what are reasonable expectations now that you've seen a few weeks of practice and talked to him, et cetera, of what role is he going to play?
I would expect him to be really good, but I would say that understanding fully that he has a lot of things he has to transition to. His style of play is very up-tempo. It's very aggressive.
Yeah.
And he is acclimating right now to structure. He is acclimating to playing next to big men who have to get the ball. He is acclimating to playing defense at this level when really he didn't have to play the sort of defense in high school he has to play now. He didn't have to play any defense in high school. He basically just had to force chaos. He is being, depending on your perspective, picked on by the coaches because he's the only freshman.
Right.
When the reality is they are harping on him because they know how good he can be and they need him to be that good right now. That's not an easy adjustment. There's any number of things that this kid has to overcome to be the player. People think he can be faster than, he might ordinarily be. But that's a compliment because he can be really good. He's really talented, and there's a big role on this team for him if he's ready to take it.
Basil Smotherman, too, is another one that's kind of interesting because he's been out of sight, out of mind to some extent. And obviously with the suspension to start the season has had to work his way back into things. You've been seeing him at practice and seeing him doing what he does. Again, reasonable expectations of what if you're going to say a typical Smotherman line in a basketball game would be what, 14, 16 minutes? Is that much? It's
up to him. I mean, it's always been up to him. If he takes defense seriously, if he applies himself to the things that make him effective, if he plays hard, if he plays with energy, if he follows details, he'll play more than that because he's talented enough to do it. He's shown that before. He's had games. The IU game last year, there's been any number of games where he has, I think the IU game last year.
2 years. Well, last year when he didn't play. But yes, absolutely.
Right.
Sped the game up. That's what I like about him.
When he gets out in transition, when he hustles, when he gets on the boards, when he defends, he's really good. when he just drifts, he just blends in, and it's all up to him. You know, he redshirted last year because Purdue had Caleb Swanigan and Vincent Edwards. Purdue still has Caleb Swanigan and Vincent Edwards. Basil Smotherman right now and Vincent Edwards and Caleb Swanigan are Purdue's only scholarship forwards. They're going to play Grady Eifert this year, I think, which tells you kind of where they are from a forwards perspective. There's tons of minutes there for Smotherman.
Yeah.
He just has to embrace them. I mean, there's a huge void with Rafael Davis gone for an athlete on the wing who will defend and play with energy, and that's exactly what he is suited to do. It's just he has to do it.
Okay, we're heading into our last few minutes here, but I wanted to get to you on early signing day for men's basketball. Matt Painter gets three, and there may be more. Matt Harms, Aaron Wheeler, and Eden Ewing. And this is just your reaction to that group, and how many more do you think you might see, or is that anybody's guess at this point?
Well, to the latter point, this might be half the class.
Yeah.
This might turn out to be half the class. Purdue's going to have some flexibility. Well, obviously, they're still waiting on guys early. It's possible they could get somebody early. If they don't get somebody early, they could get multiple guys still in the spring. If they get both, you're talking about a 5 or 6 man class, in which case this class is half complete. But what really jumps out here is, Purdue got longer and more athletic. Obviously, this was not a straight line with the people Purdue recruited from day one until the very end of this process. But Purdue got 3 players it really likes, 3 players who make a lot of sense for what Purdue's doing. They got length, they got athleticism, and those are things that Purdue doesn't have a whole lot of right now. But I think they also got skill. Purdue's had this kind of yo-yo act going where, all right, we don't have athleticism, we have to recruit a bunch of athleticism. They do that, and they don't have skill, so they recruit a bunch of skill. This seems like with Aaron Wheeler, Matt Harms in particular, I don't know Eden Ewing well enough. People say he can shoot the ball, but it seems like there's some offensive skill there too to go along with the length and athleticism. So, I mean, time will tell what these guys become, but it seems like something they can certainly work with.
Last topic of many, but one that we want to make sure hit: coaching search. Purdue's football coach search is continuing, obviously. Our conventional wisdom, whether we might be all wrong on this deal, is that they're going to try as hard as possible to hire somebody as close as possible to the November 26th game against Indiana, the bucket game. Is there any way to say where are we in this deal, or is there, except for to say we've identified some people that are that may make some sense, but it's still hard to know where this process is.
If Purdue's going to have somebody right after the IU game, they're going to have somebody who basically took the job without interviewing for the job. It's going to be okay, my people talked to your people, you told your people you're taking the job, they told my people you're taking the job, so here we are. I don't know how realistic that is. I think that when we put some clues together here, Purdue has a search firm that has a reputation for swinging for the fences early. Some buzz about maybe sitting Power 5 head coaches. Perhaps some situations out there where Power 5 head coaches might be looking for something different. Maybe they're not on the best ground with where they are, but they're good winning coaches who might just want something different. I would imagine behind the scenes right now there's some conversations taking place with some people who would qualify as some pretty name sorts of hires. Whether Purdue can get somebody like that, can put the sort of financial package together to get somebody like that, whatever the case may be, I'm not sure. But, if they're going to have somebody right after the season, one would think that they're going to have to get in on that person very quickly after the season ends and get this wrapped up. But there's really no reason to believe right now they have their guy.
Names that have been added to the list this week, or others that are ones that have become interesting to you over this time. Anybody else that jumps out at you? And again, saying very clearly that these are, even if we name current coaches at other schools, we have no idea whether they truly are interested. We just look at things.
Well, we're talking about Dan Mullen.
Yeah.
Because we've heard some things, but circumstantially, you've got a situation at Mississippi State where he's got a 3-year contract. The state of Mississippi forbids him at Mississippi State from having any longer than a 4-year contract. He makes $4 million a year. A place like Purdue could theoretically give him more security with a longer contract. He's a winning coach. He's a good coach in a situation where sometimes a lot becomes not enough in a hurry. And, he lost some games early in the year. People are turning on him a little bit.
But a big win last week against
You
A&M.
never know.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if he gets a contract extension, he's still never going to have longer than a 4-year contract. and he's in the SEC West, which is
Brutal.
a meat grinder compared to the Big Ten West,
Yeah.
which, as far as Power 5 conferences go, is pretty manageable
And he does
on
have
paper.
some Midwest
He's got some
ties.
Midwest ties. He
Bowling
might be a little
Green.
bit of a fish out of water out down in Mississippi. I don't know. Some things make sense there for at least Purdue to give him a chance to say no. He very well might not even take their phone call if
Yeah.
he's a guy they do contact. But it's situations like that are probably worth monitoring. Guys who might be willing to leave a good situation for a different situation because different might be better than what they have now.
Yeah, interesting guy, because you listen. I heard a couple interviews with him this week on XM Radio, and just in his ability to, he is kind of got a good personality, interesting from getting people to join. And like I said, I think Purdue can use two words, a ditch digger and a gatherer, both, and obviously somebody that can have the skill to build a program up. So I'm following that on I think, is it going to go from, on the site, from 3.0, 4.0 to 5.0 each week? Or when does it,
Yeah,
what
I'll just,
determines where you go to when you go?
We're just kind of doing whatever we want to do here. I mean, this is what coaching searches are. We're like more starting conversations about people than we are like, I mean, we're going to report whatever we can in terms of hard information. But right now, I mean, so little is known that we're just kind of moving the vegetables around on the plate here.
And people think it's always fun. It's fun to think people think you really know. And I always will give that disclaimer that we tend to be good at trying to connect the dots, but you got to have dots to connect, and it's not easy. And they've gotten better at making this stuff, not just Purdue, but I think this whole system has made it from the tight-lipped nature of this is a little bit more difficult to try to figure out. Would you agree to that over the last?
Yeah,
it's been
I mean,
5 years ago.
The introduction of these search firms has added a layer of secrecy to things. Now, let's see how tight-lipped the search firm is when they actually make the hire and they have to leak it to their media buddies nationally. But that's a whole other point.
Point being is we had Danny Hope a couple days before it happened, and but it's gotten a little bit tougher. And that was 6-7 years ago. So 7 years ago, if not 8. All right, well, Brian, well, thank you and for joining us, and we will take a 2-minute break and bring in Stacy Clarity and Landon Feichter, and we'll talk a little Purdue football from a player's perspective as well as we head to our final segment on Gold and Black Live.